Meeting to order for Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission for Monday, November 10th. We will start with our roll call. Position 1, Carrie Stuckey, that's me. Position 2, Denise Marion. Is Denise online? No? Okay. Position 3 is currently vacant. Position 4, Eric Dybzinski is not here, it looks like. Position 5, Tom Jones. Here. Position 6, Kim Ford.
Here.
Position 7, Vicki Biggs.
Here.
Student Representative Callie Boyer. Here. And ex officio council member Eric Marshall.
Here.
All right. Next, we will approve the agenda for today. Were there any questions or changes to be made? Okay. Is there a motion to approve
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
the agenda?
Agenda, sorry.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Did you have something else?
I'm sorry?
Did you have something else you wanted to say?
No, I said the wrong thing because I was reading the minutes as I was trying to speak about the agenda.
All right. Next, we have the approval of the minutes for our meeting of October 13th. Did we have any questions or changes for the minutes? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, those are approved. Up next, we have public comment. We did receive one public comment through email, and that is in the packet. Did we have anyone present today who would like to make a public comment? Not seeing anyone. Okay. All right, we will move on to our discussion items. Item A, Scenic Heights Trail Maintenance.
This was not a staff item. Did Tom want to
Oh.
lead this out?
Pardon?
Scenic Heights Trail Maintenance?
Okay, I use the trail frequently. My wife does as well. When it gets rainy, it's almost impassable at times. I don't know if it's an easy fix or not, but additional gravel was put in, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, and that helped for a while, but then it kind of created a moat. So when you're on the higher level, it's fine, but getting on, getting off, it's wet. And then the entrance at the Windjammer Park side is also, gets real bad when it's raining. So I know a lot of people use that year-round, so, but I don't know what the fix is.
You want to say it?
Hello? Is that working? Okay. Yeah, I can speak to that, Tom. I've looked at that in the past. Unfortunately, that is in a marsh area, it is in a wetland area. I don't know what we want to do with that because the water is coming from the one side to the other. Whenever we built up that trail, it worked for a little bit until that water naturally just washed it away. We can try to do a culvert across and dig in. I would have to look at permitting. My guess is they would allow us to do that as a repair and maintenance, but that is really the only way I can think of to get water across the trail there. But the problem becomes that the grades are so close between the one side and the other that in another month or so here, whenever we do get a lot of rain, that's where everything from the hill is draining down to. We've got stormwater basins that are down there. That's the catch-all before it goes into the ocean. So we are gathering a lot of water there, and the elevations are so close on either side of that trail that they both end up getting water. It's not like one is sitting wet and the other dries out. It's such a low spot that they both end up seeing water, and then on that trail becomes inevitably waterlogged as well in certain low low-lying sections of that trail, which is what I think you're probably talking about. Yeah, that's,
Yeah, I mean, to my simple mind, where you built it up is great, it stays dry. If there was a way to, but then it kind of ended, if there was a way to feather that out on both sides with the gravel that you have, anyway, I'm no expert, but, and it's just really the two areas that are concerned, that one area there, and then the one down at the Windjammer end. Part of the problem is you get halfway down and then you get stopped if you're not willing to get your feet wet. So, anyway, thanks for paying attention to it.
Okay, any other comments or questions on that item? Okay, we will move on then to item B, speed limit for bikes and electric bikes on Scenic Heights Trail. Did you guys have something for this, or did we want to? Okay,
no, I can talk to that. That was brought up by, and I apologize, I can't, who's the newest member of the park board? What's her name? The newest member of the park board, I can't. Denise, yes, I'm sorry. Denise was the one that brought that up. It had been a public comment a little earlier in the year, I believe. Yeah, there's just been comments that there are fast-moving bicycles within Scenic Heights. My guess is that they are using that as a connection from Fort Nugent area down through Scenic Heights to get to Windjammer. But yeah, it had come up that there's just fast-moving electric bicycles, and they wanted to discuss putting a speed limit in for electric bikes. We do not currently have anything in code that would allow me to enforce that. There's a really rough code on it. There's nothing with a speed limit sign, and I don't think electric bikes are going to decline in popularity, so I think this is something that we should absolutely discuss and think about what we want to do.
When electric bikes really started becoming popular, maybe 7-10 years ago, this came up quite a bit, and a lot of cities were looking at, okay, how should we regulate this? Should we regulate it? What's enforcement look like? This is especially a big topic around soft trails and recreational trails, which are even harder. The consensus around a lot of municipalities and agencies were that there's concern, let's not solve a problem if there is not one, but let's monitor it. We ended up putting in a lot of different regulations that mostly were things like limiting uphill electric bikes on shared trails. So we would put in, for instance, a single track uphill for traffic and then downhill only. So making the trails one way. What we're finding where people would come around a corner and then you have another bike coming up much faster than uphill traffic normally would come. For commuter trails, which this case is more speaking of, it's very hard to put up a speed limit. We're not going to be out there with a speed gun showing. But what municipalities defaulted to was a requirement to have some sort of audible indicator, a bell or horn or whatever, to let people know that bicycles are coming up on them. I think the issue is mainly around people who are walking along. It might be a mother with a child in a stroller, or a couple, hand in hand, walking along, taking a little wider path, and then a bike just zooms right past them, right? And they get startled. They're not aware of the bike. It just goes right past. And so I think that's where a lot of the concerns come from. We haven't had reports of any collisions or injuries or specific areas where there is a blind spot or bad sight lines. So we're sort of in a monitoring mode right now. My recommendation for this would be to just follow the suit of what other cities have done and put in a requirement to have a auditory mechanism on the bike that you have to let people know that you are approaching, and then we watch it. I don't know, other than maybe putting in the extreme example would be to actually put implements into the path that are speed calming, like, you have an offset fence or even like a small speed bump, but those in themselves can be quite dangerous for cyclists. Sometimes they don't always see those and then just run right into it, or they hit the bump and crash. So before we get to anything like that I would just have it as either a sign that we can put up, which people don't always pay attention to. Everyone wants to solve things with signs, and they're really probably the least effective of all the methods. But requiring that bicyclists have some kind of auditory mechanism, have that in the code, and then we have a couple days, especially that are heavier bike traffic, that we can get with PD and see if we could have maybe just an enforcement day just to kind of remind people, just friendly reminders, hey, or we work with them on some kind of educational campaign. Hey, make sure that you have a bell or a horn. We could have those as give outs, swag type things at special events, different strategies like that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. We just want to be careful to not, I guess, overreact with implementing things that might be either hard for us to actually implement or enforce, or make the experience less for everyone.
This is something we touched on a little bit in our Parks and Playgrounds subcommittee meeting. And I agree, I don't think it makes sense to go through a code change to put up a speed limit. I don't know how, if there's nobody's going to enforce that, so there's no reason to put the time and effort into making it an actual code. I do think having the requirement for a bike bell or some sort of auditory thing is feasible and easy for people to do. That would be my suggestion. Does anyone have any further comments on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think your assessment is correct. I'm not sure how much you can do except make people aware of it. I've certainly seen a lot of traffic, both bikes and scooters. Yesterday, somebody on a bike, was screeching tires for fun. But I've never seen any incidents, or even any near incidents. But again, it's the shock value of not knowing what's coming up behind you.
Not that this would solve any immediate issue if there is one, but I would be curious and would love your guys' help with just sort of outreaching to friends and neighbors and think, hey, has this ever been an issue? Have you ever been startled by a bike zooming past you? What are your thoughts? Do you bike? Do you ever have problems? Sometimes it's the other way around where you have a group that are walking around and bikes can't get around them. So love to hear some feedback. But as our streets department slowly makes renovations to the roads, you see we have a lot more bike trails going in. Our active transportation plan implements a lot of multimodal transportation. So we have designated bike paths that I think will take some of that pressure off some of the more walking commuter paths. We also are trying to make sure that our standards for putting in new commuter paths are that 10-foot wide and have a much wider area of walkway. We do have some narrow pathways, but for the most part, there is an alternate and much more ideal street side bicycling path to those narrower trails. But that's kind of the direction that the city's going, and so hopefully that'll alleviate some of the conflicts that we're concerned about.
I'm curious, as far as the impact of those e-bikes and those higher speed bicycles on that trail, as we're talking about the trail maintenance specifically right there where we meet up with Windjammer, because I have seen many persons coming up to that street and skidding to a stop. And I'm wondering, about just the erosion in the gravel there. Is that impacting the trail quality?
It's not helping it. It's not helping it. I have not seen anything on the Scenic Heights that would suggest that there's an abundance of vehicles, whether they be bikes or scooters or what have you, that are destroying the trail. Yes, by definition, they're definitely not. They're going to be more harmful than walking. But I've not seen anything. I don't think we have a problem with that at this point. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? All right, I'm not seeing any. Do you need anything from us on this?
I don't know, do you guys have a consensus recommendation? I mean, I threw out, I just sort of shotgunned some ideas to you guys. What's most appealing to you on how you want to approach it, if at all?
You talked about a bell or a horn or something, and that's going to require them to actually use it. It would be nice if there was something else that we could give away that had, almost like a playing card in a wheel, type, to be simplistic. If there was something else that we could maybe find that we could give to bicyclists to have just an audible noise, rather than having them, because I know when I ride my bike, I have an e-bike, I'm looking around and riding my bike, I'm not thinking about my little noise maker, and especially if you're coming around a trail where there's not going to be a lot of things, I just don't see that being the usage that we would think we would get out of it.
Any other comments?
I mean,
just to respond to that,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
we weren't sure either. When we implemented this in Glenwood Springs, it was a educational campaign and a lot of special events, and we gave out, I mean, they were pretty small, these little like dumbbell things. And the community caught on pretty quickly with it. I think because there was a lot more of an issue there, though. We had a pretty major commuter trail that went up and down the city. We don't have a lot of shared trail space there. Scenic Heights really is probably the only one. So, I don't know.
And I think that was the comment that I was going to make, is we're emerging sort of into the world of this kind of transportation, which requires this kind of conflict, right? We're at the very early stages of sort of creating like multimodal pathways for, transportation. So I think the idea of saying that like this is how you be a good neighbor on the trails is, we signal, we, have some basic ideas and some basic education for being a decent human being, but you can't legislate good trail morality, okay? Like you just can't. And so at that end of the day, I mean, creating a simple document that's shareable, or something on social media that talks about being a good neighbor on, or a good trail user and if we want to give away free bells, I mean, I'm not really interested in spending money on that, because it is just more of an education campaign. And so creating some nice, slick, cute, shareable, educational things, I think is going to do a lot better than trying to get into any changes to code and bylaws and this, that, and the other, and spending money where we don't need to.
I would agree with that. I think that at this point, it doesn't seem to be a major issue, so maybe just working with Maggie to make some sort of graphic that can be shared and, like Eric said, just some education put out there might be sufficient at this time. But heads are nodding. Okay, so I guess that's what we would go with at this time. Okay, any other comments or questions on that?
Hey, one last thing. We are looking at trying to get a better understanding of the use of trail systems. So we're looking into putting trail cams that have counters. So as people like cross those trails, it just, accounts it. So we can know when are the high use times, when high use times of the year, when high use times of the day, how many people are coming by. We can set that up in a way to be able to track speed. If there are bikes going back and forth, and what's an average speed of bikes, what's the high and low. So we'll keep looking into that just so we can give you guys some maybe better information around this topic and see how much of it is an issue. But again, I think the other side of that is just hearing from the community, like, is this an issue or not? And hearing real world situations would be very helpful.
I'm assuming there's some kind of standard signage that you can put at either end of the trail for bike safety or walker alertness or something. At least it shows that we're aware that it could be an issue, and to warn both bikers or motorized bikes or scooters and walkers. I don't know what's out there, but I assume there has to be some kind of a standard sign for that.
Let's talk about it in our subcommittee meeting and come up with a plan.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, we'll go ahead and move on to item C, pickleball conversion discussion.
Okay, I can take that over. Let me get on here. Share my screen. Okay. So this was a quick breakdown of the pickleball court costs to go up. I broke them down, 2 in Sumner and then 2 in Fort Nugent as well. So the Sumner, the first one is up here in the top left, is 1 permanent tennis court and 4 permanent pickleball courts. So this diagram to the right is showing you what that setup would be like. So we would take the western, I believe, most tennis court, the one that has the 2 bent posts, and we would remove those posts and add 4 pickleball courts to that area, and then redo the tennis netting, or I'm sorry, redo the surfacing on that westernmost tennis court, and keep that solely for tennis. So the cost to do that, the resurfacing, the cost at Sumner Park is $46,000. That would also need to remove the tennis net that is bent right now for $1,000. The pickleball post and net installation, those would be permanent nets. We're estimating those at $3,000 a piece to install. So we're going to do 4 sets of those. That's going to be $12,000. And a 4-foot divider net between each of these courts. So we would be removing the tennis court net, the existing tennis court net, which is right here. And we would need to put in a 55-foot divider fence in between those 2 courts to make sure the balls did not go out of those courts. So that is $61,000 estimated, $475. The pickleball 2 permanent tennis court and 4 temporary pickleball courts is this right here. So that would be converting both of the existing courts into they're They would remain tennis courts and adding 2 pickleball courts on either side of the tennis court net. That would be lines only. We would keep the tennis court coloring for inside the tennis court. So if we do that, that is going to be, resurfacing is the standard 46,000. The replacement of the tennis net and post, as I said, the one set of tennis nets is bent. So we're estimating that at $1,800 to replace that. We would have to buy four sets of pickleball nets for temporary use, and those are about $500 a piece. A 4-foot divider fence would not be installed. I apologize, so that needs to come out of there. And on-site storage, I'm proposing on-site storage for the 4 temporary pickleball nets. I think that works out the best. I know that the pickleball community has temporary nets. I don't know how that works if they're not on-site and accessible for the other pickleball players. Then we've got a breakdown of the Fort Nugent. So Fort Nugent is a little trickier.
Brandon, real quick, what was the total for that last option?
So the total for the second Sumner option was $50,800.
Thank you.
So then we're moving on to Fort Nugent. So the Fort Nugent resurfacing is, I ran 2 estimates and I only got 1 estimate on the Excel sheet. But the estimate for Fort Nugent is $21,000 base bid to resurface. If we remove, so the first one is 3 permanent pickleball courts. To do that, we would have to remove both of the basketball nets up at Fort Nugent Park. So that is in that bid. The basketball nets, so it's about $1,500 a piece. Pickleball, we would put in permanent nets for pickleball at that point if we did this iteration. And those are $3,000 a piece, which puts our cost at $9,000. There is fencing, so there's 2 costs for fencing. $40 per linear foot for galvanized fencing, and $45 per linear foot for the powder-coated black fencing. I chose to use the $45, which is the higher cost. And so if you wanted to fence the entire perimeter of the new courts, that's about 300 square feet, comes in at $13,500. And then I just cut it back from there. East and west side only is about 180 feet. So that's 8,100 feet. And then fencing on the west side only would be half of that at $4,050. And the other one that I did not get on there was what Tom had suggested as keeping one of the sides of the basketball courts and adding 2 permanent pickleball courts on the side that you would remove the basketball court, and then adding 1 temporary net on the side that the basketball court is there. The difference in those prices, where are we here? So the difference in those prices are, 41, 45. Let me do this real quick. Equals this. So we're at 45,000 for fencing all the way around, and we would drop down another 5,000 from there, so about 40,000 for fencing on east and west side only, and drop down another 4,000 from there, so we'd be at about 36,000 for just fencing around the west side. And the other numbers are as follows. We're at $43,050 for powder coated the whole way around. We're at $37,350 for the east and west side only on fencing. And then the west side only would be $33,300. So I guess, long story short is if we went to Sumner, we're looking at $61,000 to $61,000 to renovate those courts, and anywhere from $45,000 to renovate the Fort Nugent courts.
So resurfacing at Fort Nugent, what does that look like? What kind of surfacing would that be?
It's all going to be standard surfacing. It's going to be a silica sand mixture. They're going to come in, pressure wash, treat any of the cracks at the asphalt in Fort Nugent. There were more cracks in Fort Nugent than the Sumner. It was a better surface at Sumner, but they're going to build that up. They're going to fill the cracks. We will remove the basketball courts, whether it be one or two. I'm sorry, the basketball hoops. We've got the streets department would come in and cold patch over top of those to get them close. And then they're going to build up. They're going to use the asphalt to just use that as the base layer and start building up the silica layer of sand. And they're going to start building that up, and then come over top of it with another silica coloring mix that's going to harden it, and then lay out the lines and paint over top of that. The two surfaces on Sumner and Fort Nugent, they're going to be very similar. The guy that I met with said that the Sumner court will look newer because there's not any voids in the existing surfacing, so it's going to look he said it's going to look brand new. The Fort Nugent is going to look a little patchy where we do the patches underneath for the asphalt. It's going to take just a little sun fading and play to even those sections out. He said both courts are very viable to put this surfacing on.
Okay, thank you.
So just for clarity on Sumner, the estimate you got was to resurface both the tennis court and the proposed pickleball courts?
Yes.
And obviously reline both?
Yes. So the both quotes were for the area itself. So the area was Sumner tennis courts, and that was a base bid, and then there was, I believe it was $1,000 addition for every new sport lining that you wanted to do. So it was a base bid of $20,000, and it was another $1,000 to add the pickleball lines. And then with the basketball courts, we were going with basketball lines on the one bid, and then no basketball lines and just straight pickleball on the other.
I'm confused as to, so as far as the resurfacing, if Fort Nugent is in poorer shape than Sumner, why would it cost more than twice as much to resurface Sumner than it would Fort Nugent?
My guess is the area that we're doing. We're doing 2 tennis courts at Sumner, and we're doing a basketball court at Fort Nugent. So the area within Sumner is bigger. So that was be why it's more expensive.
Do you have any comments, Vicki or Eric? Go ahead.
Is there already lights surrounding the courts?
There are no lights on Sumner or at Fort Nugent, no.
Are we gonna put some in or no?
As of right now, I did not plan to do that, but we can look into that.
Carrie, can I?
Yeah.
Just a couple
Go ahead.
comments. One, just wanted to share received the email from Darren. He's not here today, but he did want to add in that the would-be Pickleball Association, or his preference, would be first Sumner Park and then second Fort Nugent Park. I'll give a few of my personal comments and then let you guys talk about this here. First, I think my preference would probably be the opposite of that, Fort Nugent over Sumner, because Sumner Park, our tennis courts, even if we did one and kept one for tennis, they're both going to end up being used for pickleball. And pickleball and tennis just clash all the time. Every city goes through this when they have shared courts. And we're going to have a lot more public comment around that probably from the tennis community. The other issues are that we don't have restroom facilities at Sumner Park. It's a much smaller parking lot that probably will not be able to handle the capacity of use for pickleball courts there. It's adjacent to Regatta, which is a little bit of a traffic mess right now. There's many things that we looked at with that park and decided that that was not where we wanted to put the pickleball courts. That's why we ended up going with Fort Nugent. A lot because the infrastructure is just already in place for pickleball courts there. Sumner does not have any kind of like ADA pathways or anything to access the courts. We'll have that already built in at Fort Nugent Park. So just from a capacity perspective, Fort Nugent makes more sense in my mind. Has restrooms right there, ADA pathways. Your question about lighting, no, we don't have lighting at any of our sports courts really. But that is something that we are looking at and researching and would like to implement it in the future. This is a capital project. It's an unfunded project. It's not in the budget. This is something we would have to go to council for additional appropriation. We'd have to work through finance to figure out what that would even look like, if we can redirect some other funding from another project. And also keep in mind that this is, I think this started out as an idea of, hey, can we put in something just quick and temporary while we're waiting for the actual pickleball project to materialize. But the ask here is a little more involved. This is a full-on capital project. I'd be concerned that anything that we put in funding-wise into this is just pulling away from the nice pickleball complex that we would like to build, which is one of the other reasons why Fort Nugent is, I think in my mind, a better location than Sumner in that if you're going to have pickleball courts right there, if you're going to convert some and have additional, it'd be great to have them right there as well. But Sumner Park is a location that I think we've always thought about. That would be great to be our second site. If, you know, we don't want to just be one and done. I think we need a number of pickleball courts throughout the community, and that would probably be my my next area we'd look at installing them adjacent to the tennis courts. We have plenty of field there to work with, but it does need some supporting infrastructure improvements as well, with pathways, lighting, parking, restrooms, water, all that.
Is the idea that if the Fort Nugent basketball court was converted, because in my mind, the original request, like you said, was just a temporary, where can we play before the big project is finished? So is the intention to convert the basketball court permanently, or is there a way to convert it temporarily where it can be converted back to a basketball court when the bigger pickleball project is completed?
No, what we're talking about with the ask from the association, I don't want to speak for them, put words in their mouth, but from my understanding, from what we've heard from them, is they would like to see fencing put around the court, right? They want to see it lined. They want to have posts installed. All those things converted to pickleball courts. We'd have to kind of undo all that to do basketball courts. You don't, we'd be pulling out the basketball posts anyway, so we have to reinstall those. We're going to have to punch in sleeves for the pickleball posts, so we'd have to undo that and resurface and refill that. So it's everything, I guess, could be temporary, but it's not built as temporary. It'd be permanent. We'd have to do another project to undo that.
So whatever we choose to do is essentially a permanent. This is no longer a temporary ask. It's a permanent fixture that they're asking for.
Right, unless they want to put down like chalk lines and, you know, have the little mobile nets like they did for that one day, they're welcome to do that as much as they like to.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, if we're going to surface and break up asphalt and punch in holes and things like that, then, you know.
Yeah.
The creep on this project is what's the challenge for me. Like, I like pickleball. I like the fact that it's growing. I like the relative low cost for the equipment. There's just so many things to like about pickleball, but as this conversation has gone on, the numbers are getting bigger, and I do worry about it taking away from our goal. And our goal is to have an 8-court pickleball complex that's going to drastically reshape, you know, our recreation options. And I worry that this is what we're trying to get away from, I think, with our grander vision for how we're doing recreation in Oak Harbor, is being persistent in doing the right thing and the big thing, the good thing, rather than nickel and dime ourselves to the point now where we're sort of hamstrung from accomplishing the better things that, again, go from amenities to attractions, right? That's the thing that I've kind of a dichotomy that I've used. Like, I want to get a solution here, but I'm really starting to think that we need to come up with some way in which to do a temporary setup. You know, the last couple weeks I've been out at Fort Nugent quite regularly preparing for a disc golf tournament, doing maintenance and cleanup and trash pickup. And every day, even in the wind, there was somebody shooting hoops. There was almost always somebody out there in the afternoon shooting hoops. And they were there all weekend. And there's just a lot of things here that bother me. I don't really want to spend $60,000 that we don't have allocated towards a stopgap. The surface as it is at Fort Nugent is better than the surface that's at the existing place where they play. And the thing is people are still going to play at Rotary Park. You know, people will still go there because they've gone there. Some people will want to drift over. I really wonder if there's a solution that we can have that has temporary nets available. And yeah, we'll have to figure out the logistics of access to them, and also temporary, boundary barriers that they use in other places for temporary setups like these racket sports that we can again repurpose into our recreation program and have for other uses. And it won't cost us nearly as much as permanent. We won't be losing an amenity, but we'll be able to get something that's an improvement and create greater volume while we work towards a better goal. And I don't also want to ask like, hey, well, pickleballers, why don't we fundraise for this? I would rather have all the fundraising go for the real good projects so they get a good, high-quality deliverable that we can all be proud of. Because no matter what we do here, this is going to be fine, but it's just going to be fine. And I would rather set my sights on something that we can all be incredibly excited about and that the greater community at large can be excited about. Something that moves the needle, and I'd rather spend the money there.
Thank you. Ryan, you had mentioned at our last council meeting, I believe, that the open space plan identifies, or other ones have identified a need for 1 pickleball court per 2,000 residents. And so at that ratio, we would be looking at 12 courts for the city of Oak Harbor. I see Sumner as an opportunity to have those additional courts, you know, even if we build out the 8 courts at Fort Nugent at $1.2 million, when and if we get grants, this still allows us the opportunity to have 4 additional courts. And I hear what you're saying about the facilities, but we can't put everything in the 2 parks that currently have restrooms. We can't put everything in Fort Nugent. We can't put everything at Windjammer Park, because otherwise then we have no open space. We have to start planning to better utilize the parks that we have. And, you know, pickleball currently uses Rotary Park. Well, it doesn't have a designated parking spot. It doesn't have ADA trails. It doesn't have a restroom, yet they still make it work. And so I think if by looking at the first option presented by Brandon, that puts racket sports together. It still keeps a designated tennis court. It creates permanent pickleball courts. It's a win-win for, I know there's going to be some conflict, but both courts then are getting resurfaced. We're not taking away an additional court where people who play basketball. I mean, this in my mind makes the most sense. The fencing is already there. It creates 4 permanent courts for $61,000 plus it resurfaces an existing tennis court. And then once we are activating that park, then we can start looking at that capital improvement plans of fixing that parking lot, adding restrooms, potentially in the future expanding that space. But we're going to need more than just the 8 pickleball courts. We're going to, the rotary courts are not. There's a reason the city walked away from it with the root intrusion. It's not city property. I think, in my mind, this makes the most sense. With any of the locations we choose, there's going to be challenges with parking. There's going to be challenges with traffic. There's going to be challenges with anything that we do. But I think this gives us the most options with a permanent solution without taking away from an existing court. So.
And I think if we're going to spend money, I would want to spend money in that direction too, and just kind of make Sumner a racket, with the vision of increasing court space there for tennis and everything as we go on. If we were going to spend money, that would be my preference.
I would agree with that. If we're going to spend money, Sumner seems to be the more logical place. I'm just stuck on where are we getting the money from? And so is pickleball, I know they've mentioned fundraising. Have they committed to a certain amount of fundraising, or have they given us an idea of what they would want to contribute or be able to contribute in more of like a concrete number?
No. I think Darren had concerns that the city was requiring them to have a certain amount to do anything.
Sure. Yeah.
It's
I mean,
not
I
a
don't think
requirement, but-
it's a requirement, but it would be good to know if they're going to fundraise what we're working with there. Because I'm just concerned about the dollar amount and spending that amount of money when we haven't budgeted for it. So
Again, I wanna
that's
be
my main concern.
Careful speaking for them, but as I recall, yes, he did suggest that they could do some fundraising for donations.
Go ahead, Tom.
I wouldn't want to sacrifice the 8-court project that we have designed now. I don't think we would be, since we're going to, it appears to be relying on grant money to do that. The other thing is, as far as what's temporary, well, we don't know how long temporary is going to be because we don't know about grant money. So temporary could be 5 years. And right now we have 0 courts for the city. So that's another issue. I would personally like Fort Nugent. I just think it has a good feel to it, and it does have the permanent support facilities. But we get 4 courts out of Sumner, and what we need is courts. So 4 courts is better than 3 courts, and 4 courts is better than 2 courts. So for that reason. The other thing is, think about what we're getting. Nobody wants to spend money, but you think about what it costs to do something. The 8-court solution now, if it comes in at 1.2 million, for example, is $150,000 a court. We can get 4 courts for $60,000 and be pretty good courts. Yes, there might be some conflict with tennis, but I think that would work itself out. So I don't see it as just a temporary. I see it as something that's needed now, and it's probably going to have to last us for a while. But I certainly don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize the 8-court solution at Fort Nugent.
Just by way of devil's advocate, I want to think about something else that I think we take for granted. How many soccer fields does the city actually have full control over? How many? This is rhetorical. Okay, but
City doesn't have soccer fields.
right. And how long have we had a history of, soccer program that's fairly healthy and robust? How many football fields does the city have control over that are? How many baseball fields, softball, right? Okay, we have 4, right? Okay. But my point is here is just that argument to say that we don't have volume. Yeah, we don't have volume for a lot of things, in reality. Like, we don't have any inventory for a lot of these things that have had a long-standing history. And while pickleball is the fastest growing sport, and it is on the rise, and I absolutely think pickleball is phenomenal for the community, I just want to remind ourselves that just because we have facilities that we get to use right now, they're in the same situation as the facilities that pickleball gets to use right now, where they're in some weird shared limbo space. And we're all just sort of making do with almost all of our outdoor recreation. And it's the big challenge that we have here, and we have to figure out how to handle that across the board with all of this stuff and where are the good spends. And it's all going to cost a lot of money. And we have to figure that out. And so, yeah, figuring out a solution and doing an economical solution to get courts in that, while we can, I think is great. I just also want to remind ourselves in the greater scope, every single sport has the same problem and with what the city has to work with. And it's incredibly difficult. And we have to figure out how to prioritize and handle all that stuff. And I don't necessarily know the answer, but I just want to bring that back into the limelight to realize the situation that we're in. It sort of is, when we really analyze it in the same way, it's kind of, we have meager things to work with. And we're doing the best we can with a less than ideal situation.
Point taken. But remember, the courts that are being used now, it's not just that they're not city, it's that they're in very poor condition. So it's not just the issue of it not being city-owned.
I mean, I totally agree. Look at the baseball fields. We don't even have the right paths lined up. Everything is struggling and decrepit, in a lot of ways. I mean, we have some really nice stuff, but we have a lot of really rough stuff. And we do need to figure out a situation for this. I do not want to see people getting hurt playing pickleball or any other sport. But particularly with the multi-generational nature of pickleball, I have some, higher grade concerns about people getting injured. And that does motivate me to want to do something. I just very concerned about where we're going to get the money, and I really don't want to go for an ask for this, and then later we find that the grant situation doesn't get us all the way there, and now we're going for an ask again, and have, city council and the administration be like, look, we already helped figure out a way. We already did some accounting gymnastics in order to get something, and now we find that, we need to do it again. Those are just my nerves on that, because I really do want to see something amazing happen for the community and for pickleball. I just want to make sure that we do it right so we can realize the dream.
Chair Stuckey, if I may weigh in on how to find the money for these projects. And it's Dave Goldman, Finance Director and Deputy City Administrator. We'll be starting our budget process next year, probably in the spring or early summer for the 2027-28 budget. That's where all the different areas of the city, Parks and Recreation, Public Works, Public Safety, all the areas of the city come in and prioritize what their top priorities are and all the different projects and initiatives they have. And it gets put forth to the city council for them to look at the whole picture so they can see all the different, desires and needs and wants, and just weigh everything together based on how much money we actually have to spend. And then, based on that, they make their decision about what to include in the budget and what to maybe include in the budget if we get a grant, or for example. So that process will start, next year, and we'll go through it from there. That way we can stick with the plan we have, that was approved by the city council and was updated in the recent mid-biennial budget amendment as far as what to pursue for the upcoming 26 year. But at least we'll be able to have some kind of semblance of idea to bring to council for the 27-28 biennial budget if we can go forward and put together our priorities, not just for this one particular project, but all the different parks and recreation projects that are out there, so that the city council can have a better understanding of what they're looking at, what the overall picture is for the amount of resources we have.
Are you saying there's a possibility to fund, are you speaking about this, what we're talking about now, or are you talking about the bigger projects as far as
Well, I'm talking about
city funded?
Talk about the whole thing. I mean, there's only so much money to go around. we're not a bottomless pit of, we don't have like a money tree out back, to spend on everything that the community is asking for. Unfortunately, I wish, certainly wish we had that, but, our job really is to work with the different committees we have. Parks and Recreation is one of them. We have a number of different areas of the city that are asking for resources and things to be funded, right? And the idea is to go ahead and bring those different ideas to City Council, who will have a good understanding of what financial position we're in, so they can decide what to fund and how to fund it. So that's really, the normal process we do when we put a budget together, So that's kind of what I'm getting at,
Councilmember Marshall, could you, just from a big picture perspective, as a council member, council has to approve funding. What are your thoughts on this dollar amount for this project?
This is obviously significantly less than trying to fund the full 8-court project, and I've had a discussion with Darren about even the possibility of expanding the current footprint, which would, if we expanded it some, we could actually get 8 courts out of that, which would make this price tag higher, however, still significantly less than the original 1.2. I think what's important in having my discussions with Darren as well is that we identify what we want to do. There's been talk about asking them to fundraise, but it's been a moving target. Once we can identify what we want to do, where we want it to go, then they can start to look at fundraising. Then we can apply for grants. Then we can, look at a true funding source. But until we land on where we want this to go and what we want this to look like, it's all just open speculation. And so I would be curious to know what it takes just to expand that out and how to get 8 courts out of that. I like the idea of keeping a permanent tennis, but is that utilized enough to justify one permanent tennis court? The answer is I don't know, but for me, I think this is, and I don't speak for council, but we've heard loud and clear that this is a community want. This is something that's important to our constituents, and then how do we figure out how to make it happen? But we need to land on what we want to do and how we want it to look before we start looking at how we're going to raise funds for it. I've also asked Darren, as a numbers guy, to come up with, if we had an 8 pickleball court, what does tournaments look like? What is our return on investment from in something like this? How much money could we potentially get in hosting tournaments here? How much money would that potentially look like in LTAC revenue gains from people that are coming to stand in the hotels? If we can identify what our return is, that makes that ask, that spend that much easier, because we can say, well, in 5 years or 10 years, we're going to get this kind of return out of it. So,
Thank you. Barbara has been raising her hand off and on. Did you have something you'd like to chime in?
I disagree with Councilmember Marshall. This is Councilmember Arms. The problem with Sumner is it's in a neighborhood. There is no parking. The parking is limited. And you were talking that you're going to probably have to use Regatta. Regatta is a mess. Traffic is horrific. And you were asking, and a lot of that isn't sidewalk on First, I think it is. It is not. It is all gravel. So how are you going to get all these people into this park? Because there is things for the kids there. It slopes up. It's not flat. It's a slope, and then you get to the tennis. When you're talking about lighting, the house next door is right there. So how are you going to accommodate a neighborhood that was designed as a neighborhood park? I understand the need, but you were talking about putting it in a community. It's not like Fort Nugent. You were talking, there's nothing. I mean, it's all houses. You know what? And the neighbors, you're going to park over there, and then they're going to be yelling and screaming. And this is the problem. And Regatta is extremely busy. traffic is really hard. So you may want to expand it, but now you've got more mass. There isn't there. There's one bathroom. There's nothing there. You're talking a lot of work. You're talking 61,000. You're talking a lot of work. You're going to have to make the pillars. You're going to have to do that. You're going to have to do a lot of things. I do not think, oh, we're just going to fix that. And I don't know how the neighbors feel. But I know from my own personal experience when I was up there, it's right there in the neighborhood. I mean, they're right across the street. Do they want all that traffic? And, oh, everybody's going to be obedient and park where they're supposed to. So that is what my concern is for the neighborhood. I agree that we probably need to do something, but we need to look at the larger scope. It's not like Fort Nugent that is a park. We are putting a pocket park and making it an astronomical big park in a neighborhood we're already having problems with. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Barbara. Go ahead.
I just can't help myself. I would just ask Councilmember Arms if she's ever gone up Highway 20 in Swantown. I mean, that intersection is also a mess. And then trying to get on Swantown to Fort Nugent is also a mess. So to say we can't do something strictly because of traffic during school times, there is no current parking at Rotary Park, or Rotary, is that where you're at? Rotary? Yeah, there's no current parking at Rotary Park either, and is also surrounded by houses. There is a bunch of apartments out there. It's still a city park and still can be utilized as such. It's not like we're putting a sports complex out there. We'd be putting pickleball courts out there. Yeah. And we only need 4 for council.
And again, I think though this conversation right here highlights the problem. Like, this is the problem that we're finding ourselves with a lot of this. We've got ourselves kind of into a corner, and we can talk ourselves either way about what's acceptable use for which, what, or the other, and where we're going to put stuff. It's the same conversations we have about not trying to overcrowd Windjammer and Fort Nugent, and where do you put all these different things. Like, this is why we now have a parks director and a parks supervisor to help sort of untangle this knot so we can figure out best and greatest usage for all of these parks that we say are pocket parks but have no real function and therefore have no real use, but yet they have maintenance costs that go along with them. And so they just become, in the red. They just are things that put us in the red. Well, what do we do to at least get enjoyment from these situations? So if we can't get them fiscally into the black, that at least we do by the goodwill and the improvement of the quality of life for, our residents. This is the challenge. And every single one of these decisions that we have to make, we're going to be making on a non-ideal basis. So what is the acceptable non-ideal? And that's the answer that I don't have, and that's why I keep going back and forth with this. Because really the ideal situation is the 8-court complex, and we've got the plan for it. We just don't have the money. And then on the other side, we don't have the patience. And I understand that too. And we need to figure out something to do, and I don't have the magic answer, and I don't have a genie lamp. I've been looking. And I don't know what the situation is, and I don't know, what the avid pickleball folks will be satisfied with either, because I feel like the bar keeps going up as we keep having the conversations, and I understand why, because we look at all the factors and we're like, well, that's going to need squared away, and that's going to need squared away, and yeah, they're right. But there's also money tied to it. And then we have this conversation that we're just having where somebody's not going to be happy about the choice that we make no matter where it goes. And everywhere we go, parking's terrible. Let's just face that. The only time parking at Fort Nugent is good is when nobody's using it. And what does that solve? When people are using the parking's terrible. When people are using the park, it's unsafe. Fort Nugent is unsafe. When it's close to either the start of work or after work, Highway 20 in Swantown is terrible. It just is. And and the same thing for Regatta. Okay, so what's the solution to that? Well, now we're going outside of our sort of area of responsibility, but everybody knows that these are problems. We have to figure out what's the best we can do with what we have to work with, and that's going to cost everybody something, because none of us are going to get the thing that we exactly would love to have, but we have to come up with something, I think, because, you know, the call is out there, and I think it's justified to come up with a solution.
So, speaking of non-ideal solutions, and everyone can shoot this down immediately if you hate it, it just is a thought that popped in my mind. The problem is funding for this giant project we're wanting to do, and we may or may not ever get grants. Pickleball people don't want to wait that long. Could we rethink the big project to be a phased project or a smaller project to begin with, so that we're not waiting for this $1 million+ in grants that may or may not ever come? But instead of building these temporary solutions outside of that, start building that. Is that an option or a possibility? It's just a thought I had. Feel free to shoot it down.
We have a four-court phased option available in the plans. You know, the cost, though, isn't half. The cost is more than half because we have mobilization and equipment and all those things that, you know, so it's not like it's going to get us down to like 600,000 or 700,000. It's going to be still higher just because we have all the things that it takes to mobilize a project like that. Now, is that to say we couldn't do two? Well, yeah, sure. We could redraw the plan for that. But right now, we do have a phased option. It's not exactly a cut in half dollar amount.
Is it more attainable, though, in a shorter timeline? Because that seems to be the issue, is the timeline.
Well, it would still be 10 times the cost of doing it at Sumner, you know, or more than 10 times the cost of doing it at Sumner. So is it attainable? Yeah, it's more attainable than the 8-court. It's less attainable than Sumner, you know.
Denise, did you have any comments? I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak if you had any comments.
I have been thinking about the phased implementation too, Carrie, but it appears that probably the cost is prohibitive. If there was some way we could add courts 1 or 2 at a time, that seems like the best option to me. And as far as what Councilmember Armis said, pickleball courts are used, say there are 4 people using it, that's 4 cars if nobody carpools. And carpooling could be something that the Parks Commission promotes. Giving preferential parking to people who do carpool, one idea. There are restrooms there at the Summit Park. I mean, it's not great, but pickleballers don't have to play at night, so maybe we don't have to illuminate it. If we're talking about a temporary solution, that might be the best one. It's just what I was thinking.
Thanks, Denise. Did you have something you wanted to say?
I would just remind everyone that there's never the right answer, right? There's always going to be people that are going to be unhappy with whatever decision that you make. But this is an advisory board. I mean, it's the opportunity to present your best proposal to council, and then let council figure out, you know, the logistics of it. Where it's, do we accept that proposal? Do we go to that location, and then how do we acquire the funding for it? So we've identified a need. We've identified options. You know, at some point, you know, a proposal or a recommendation should be made as to how we want to go. Otherwise, we'll just talk this in circles, you know, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing I'd like to say about the phased approach, though, is we need to be careful with that. I would suggest that we haven't shown ourselves to be very good at managing phased work. Well, I think Windjammer Park kind of highlights that. And it's only because often the target gets moved. And like Windjammer Park, for example, we kind of muddied in together some phases in order to get things to where they were. And we didn't complete some of the stuff that we maybe should have, just for one reason or another. And this is not casting stones or fault, it's just what happens with some of these projects. And that's the nature of phased work. You see it in, not just in parks, but you see it in all kinds of development. So I'd be cautious with that. That said, I do think we need to make some kind of recommendation, as Councilmember Marshall said, or, offer something to council for them to do what they're, called the lead to do, and let's move on.
Are there any options we can rule out? Do we have any consensus on that? Go ahead.
So I, for one, would not be in favor of a phased approach for the larger project. I think part of the grant is contingent upon we have a shovel-ready project, right? And to Eric's point, once you mobilize that equipment, it's still going to cost you, a good deal of money. Your money ahead if you do the project in its entirety, as opposed to trying to phase something like this in. So I wouldn't be supportive of a phased approach to the 8 courts.
Okay. Any other thoughts from any other commissioners?
Hey, Brian, can we make a recommendation that, like, on one option each for Fort Nugent and Sumner, and let council decide what they think's best? Like saying, well,
Yes.
we don't want the half basketball court option, just for example. We want to just go full tilt pickleball there and 4 courts at Sumner, and like council, make, these are 2 viable options that we can offer you.
So the missing piece in all these is the funding portion, right? So with the larger project, we're reliant on 2 grants, 1 grant for the funding and 1 grant to provide the match for the funding. We don't have city budget allocated to be the grant match at this point. So whether you phase it or, have it as a whole project, we still have to go after grant funding, and that's still going to affect the timing of the project. So phasing it does not make it faster or anything like that. Same thing with either of these projects, they're unfunded right now, right? So either we need to wait until the budget cycle and going through that and putting it into the budget with the rest of the allocations, like David had said, that dictates the funding, so that would not happen or be implementable until 2027. The other option around there is we have to go to council and have some appropriation redirected or pulled from REIT or some other funding source to cover it. We look at, how do we make this a doable project and what we can pull together for it. So your, task today is, having looked at the options, heard and had discussions, what is your preference as far as this request for doing a smaller pickleball project in light of the larger project that we're trying to get implemented, and we're at the end of the permitting for that, and that should be ready to go forward next month, barring funding again, right? What is your preference on what you would like to see go forward? We'll take it from that point and go to council and say, here's a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Commission on this ask from the community. You've heard from them. Here is the department and administration's recommendation for implementation, whatever that might look like with timing. And we can kind of ping that back to you guys of, hey, here's how we would do it, how we would fund it, whatever you want to decide you want to do. But yeah, we'll take that to council, and then however you want to go forward, we'll see if we can make it happen. But again, this is a project that has not been on your priority list at all. In a list of many different projects and planning efforts that we're doing right now, there's no funding allocation for it. So you also want to be, I'll just give a little bit of caution of being a reactionary board, that if a community group comes and says, hey, we need this, especially if it's something that you're already working on, having a reaction of, okay, well, yes, let's figure out and bend over backwards to figure out how we can offer this for you. In some cases, that's warranted, but I'd be careful of setting a precedence of that. There are a lot of needs and wants out there, right?
I was just going to say something similar. The next discussion item is our priorities, and that is something that I am struggling with this in particular, is this is not something we had planned for. This is not something that was on our radar as a priority at all. I mean, certainly pickleball was, and the larger pickleball project was. I'm just struggling with this additional project that's just kind of on our plates now that was never a part of our priorities in the first place. And so without revisiting that priority discussion, I don't know where this lands on everybody's priority list for the commission at this time. But what we can do is we can go around and have each person say their preference with the options given. Go ahead.
So I will speak to that a little bit, where it's not necessarily been named as a priority. This is something that's been in discussion for years. I mean, as council, we allocated $50,000 3 years ago, or more. No, it wasn't that. No, I was on I was 50,000. I was on council at the time where we had allocated $50,000 to redo Rotary Park because we identified pickleball as being a need in our community. Yeah. And we didn't do that for a number of reasons. One, the cost was prohibitive. Two, we don't own that property. And so that led to this additional discussion. So I would say, while it's not been necessarily identified as a priority, it has been a priority to establish pickleball courts. And sometimes that's what's necessary is, you know, we looked at this option and that didn't work. Then we looked at the larger option, and as of right now, that's not working out. And so can we come somewhere in the middle and find a solution that will get us to a bigger project? So I had the same concern, Brian. I voiced that last meeting about, you know, listening to the loudest voice in the room, but it has been a topic of discussion, and, you know, it's been recognized as a priority, you know, for a little while.
Well, and that's what I say. Pickleball itself has been a priority, but our priority was the larger project. This is a totally new proposal that is on our plate now that hasn't really been discussed as a priority or not. So I don't know where that lands with each one of us as commissioners.
Just a general comment. What I'm hearing from everybody is that we're concerned that pickleball is going to be too successful, that we're going to have too many people. It's going to cause problems because we have too many people. I think we need to do something. So I would propose that we go around, hear from each person, and then make a decision on what we want to forward on to council.
Okay. Does anyone want to go first?
Well, my solution isn't even on the list. I would rather see us remove that net at Sumner because it needs fixed anyway, and then set up the ability to do temporary courts both there and at Fort Nugent. Now we get volume. We're not totally taking anything away. Yes, we have to figure out the logistics of how the nets are got. And then we can do, you know, there's varieties of ways to do inexpensive marking. And now we get potentially 7 courts for a lot less resources. They're going to be better. They're going to be more safe. We don't lose any amenities long term. We provide volume, and we keep our eye on the prize, which is the 8 courts.
Just to clarify, so you're talking about putting on, like, you know, paint like stencil paint lines or something like that, and then have like mobile nets that the association would bring out for pickleball times or something
Absolutely.
like that?
Nets that could be got at the center or whatever it might be, or however we need to do that. And now we can get 7 courts at a relatively low cost, 3 at Fort Nugent, 4 at Sumner. We need to replace that net and post anyway at Sumner, so when the temporary courts come back out, or if they do come back out, or if we decide that we're never going to be able to get this other project, then we do a permanent conversion. But now we answer the call to get some courts out there while we're not hamstrung necessarily in the same ways financially, and we can keep fundraising, I think, hopefully, and working towards the 8 court. And I know that's not ideal, and pickleball is going to not probably be happy with that solution, but it's I feel like it's the best pathway forward in order to make sure we achieve the real goal, which is the plan that we already have in place.
One thing to clarify, you said 4 courts at at Sumner and then 3 at Fort Nugent. Would that be removing the basketball nets as well?
Could we do 3 there without removing the nets if they're temporary? Can we do 2? Then we do 6?
I think we could do 6.
Then let's do 2 and 6.
Is that
now
correct,
we've gone
Tom?
from 0 to 6, 600% increase. I like it.
I feel like initially when this was being discussed, that was what I had envisioned as the ask. When it first came to us, the ask was a temporary solution between now and when the big project gets done. And that is what I was envisioning. If that's an option that everyone is going to be able to live with, that would ultimately be my preference. Out of the options presented to us today, I would go with Sumner with the 4 courts. But like I say, I'm still very hesitant about that. But like Eric said, the temporary nets, then you do have that option. You do add those courts. They are a temporary fix, but that is what was kind of presented to us to begin with. So that's kind of where I'm at. Those are my top 2 choices. Tom?
So if it's viable to do the temporary, keep basketball courts up, and coexist with tennis and basketball and do this, I mean, that seems like at this point in time the most reasonable for everybody. There's going to be people that are going to show up to play basketball. There's going to be pickleballers out there. There's going to be somebody playing basketball, and people are going to want to play pickleball. There's going to be conversations to be had, but that would be I like that solution the best.
I agree. I like the option if we can go as temporary as possible with the portable nets and use the existing courts that we have in that temporary capacity until we can get the bigger project completed. I think would be preferable. If that's not a feasible option, then I would agree with converting one of the Sumner courts to pickleball and resurfacing both of those so that we are making a investment in an existing court in an alternate park, and utilizing more of our park facilities in that capacity.
Denise, did you want to go ahead and state your opinion?
I agree with what you said, Carrie. I think that would be a good proposal. We want to go ahead with the big project. That's the funding that we're wanting for that. And in the meantime, we're going to do this temporary deal where we can switch the nets if we need to, and have courts at both Sumner and Fort Nugent.
Thank you, Denise. Tom, did you want to?
Eric, what you were suggesting was to leave the court surfaces the way they are, or to go forward with the improved court surface?
I would suggest leaving them the way they are, and then let's see where we can get on these grants. Now, if we're finding out the situation is that we're just not going to get these grants and this other thing's not going to come to fruition, or it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be so far down the road, then I think we talk about investing, and we can work that in, to the next budget of investing in resurfacing and stuff once we have a better handle on what grants might be available and how we can handle that. We have some time then to reassess and come up with the next plan of attack to do a total improvement. And it would still be better than Rotary. It wouldn't be ideal. Again, and I recognize that this isn't going to make me very probably popular with pickleball and saying these things, but I'm trying to be popular later with them, okay, with the big project.
Okay, my suggestion would be to go with the option for Sumner. We get 4 courts, and that they be permanent, and that we resurface that entire area, so tennis also gets a little bit of a improved facility. And that way I think we can handle all players the best that we can. I think the court surface is important in pickleball. So I would want to go with the improved court surface. And I think temporary nets are doable, but they're far, far from optimal. It's like any sport, bring your own net. I think we should have a permanent facility so people that are not willing to invest can go out and try the sport and can play the sport. As I mentioned a long time ago, the people that play regularly and they play with the same group, they will provide their own nets. But the people that just want to go and play, they want to play with whoever's at the court at the time, there's not a net. The other thing, if you don't have a net, somebody brings a net, guess what? That's now their court. So you don't have a queue. I've seen this happen. And so it's hard to break into somebody's court if they're saying it's my net, it's my court. So anyway, for those reasons, I say my option is the Sumner option. Gives us 4 courts, resurface for tennis and pickleball, and gives us 4 permanent pickleball courts.
So for temporary, does that mean you have to bring your own net?
Yeah.
Well, I think what I was suggesting was that you would bring your own net, but it would be a net that actually that we as the city provide, and it could be checked out from the center, right? Like what we're investing in isn't the resurfacing right now. We're investing in these pieces of equipment that could hopefully then later be, my idea was that'd be later be repurposed by our programming. That we have these nets that we can then use in a variety of different ways, because when you're teaching people a sport, a lot of times you can set up on less than ideal. And also, please remember, when we talk about surfaces matter, like some of the biggest basketball tournaments in the world are set up on streets throughout cities. And surface matters for basketball too. Surface matters for every sport. And you can get, tens of thousands of people to play basketball on city streets in places with terrible city streets like Spokane, if you've ever been to Hoop Fest. And again, it's for love of the game. And for love of the game, we're trying to get 8 courts that are going to be absolutely phenomenal and a really good project that is now shovel ready. Following that logic, and I agree with your logic, is that we need surface. Ideally, surfacing for pickleball is great. This is why I think Sumner would be my second choice, even though the parking situation's heinous. But basketball needs a good surface too, and they don't have it right now either. Their surface isn't great for basketball either. And those are considerations that we need to extend to all the sports in the same way. Yes, I get it that racket sports are different. I know, but it's just, again, we're looking at a stopgap thing. We're talking about potentially increasing a volume and still having the not so good courts over at Rotary, that will still be there with permanent nets set up for the people that need permanent nets. And if they're just getting into the sport, I learned to shoot hoops, play basketball, like a lot of people, on a hoop that was crooked and bent. That's what we had available, and that's where we learned. And I'm not saying that that's the ideal state, but none of this is. But again, with you, your first choice would be my second choice if we can't do a temporary thing, and I'm fine with either. I trust the wisdom of the council to make the best decision.
I think $60,000 is a great investment for the number of people that are going to be using this facility. I think the benefit is going to be phenomenal, and I think you're all going to see it instantly. Not during the winter months, but following that. The sooner we can make it happen, if we can make it happen by this spring or summer, I would applaud that. If it has to wait for the next budget cycle, that's too bad. Anyway, I rest my case.
So it sounds like the consensus is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us would like a temporary solution, as Eric presented, but the second choice is the 4 courts at Sumner. Is that fair?
The second choice?
Well, based on what all of us have said.
I don't know, I didn't hear Tim saying that.
Can you?
Yeah, my first choice would be a temporary solution with the temporary nets, so that we're able to maintain basketball, we're able to maintain tennis, and we'll have a temporary spot for pickleball with the temporary. If we're not able to do the temporary, I would propose converting the 1 tennis court at Sumner to the 4 pickleball courts.
And since council's got to decide how to spend the money anyway, here's 2 options. And then council figure it out. Because like you said, Tom, I think $60,000 for this project and the grants, yeah, that's fine. If I could write the check for that, I would. We just don't have it in the budget. But if council wants to spend that for that, I think it's going to be a fantastic use of resources and money. And I think it will pay dividends as far as the enjoyment of the pickleball community and the benefit to our community. So I'm certainly not against that. I'm just trying to figure out how we don't ask twice for the same thing, if that's possible, in order to make sure that the other one comes to realization.
Well, and we've got to kind of watch time here. For the temporary, I believe we can procure some nets and do the stencil lines without needing to go to council. We can absorb that in our budget. I can move things around. For the Sumner Park, do you want us to take that to count? You want us to work on figuring out some creative financial solutions and take that to council, move forward with that, or you want us to just go with the temporary nets? 'Cause
Everyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but could you bring both of these ideas to council and say, are you willing, council, to invest this money in this Sumner Park project? And if not, this is our alternative.
Yeah.
And then they can decide whether that's an investment they want to deal with or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should do that. I think I'd like to have council, here's our recommendations. What does council thinks in their purview? What do they think's the most judicious use of resources? Just taking it out of the budget of the Parks and Rec to do something temporary, or spend more money to do something different because we want to provide something that we've been discussing for a long time and at one point had a large amount of this money. In fact, without inflation, basically the total amount of the money that it would be to do this project, at one point allocating it at Rotary, which we didn't have control of. So I think hearing from them would be a benefit. And if they decide that, whichever way they decide, let's go that way.
Do you need a formal motion?
Please.
Okay. Can someone make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we forward to council for consideration renovation of the Sumner Park facility to create 4 pickleball courts, permanent pickleball courts, leave 1 permanent tennis court, and resurface the entire facility. We can give them options, but that would, I'm not sure what we're saying the step down would be, but the step down would be Fort Nugent, or the step down would be leave the courts surfaces the way they are and just line. I'm not sure what we're asking for. But my proposal would be to go with what I said, my motion. Let's put it that way. since I
Okay,
already made a
so
motion.
just to discuss that real quick, am I allowed to make the motion as the chair or no?
You have a motion.
Yeah, I know, but I just am trying to, right, I'm just trying to, okay, do we have a second? Not at this time. Okay. So let's come up with a new motion.
I'd like to make a motion for the council to consider 2 options. One, for installing temporary pickleball courts at Sumner and Fort Nugent or installing a permanent 4-court at Sumner. So I'd like to make the recommendation for considering both options and making a decision. I'm making a motion for city council to make a decision between either installing only temporary courts at 2 sites or permanent courts at Sumner, as proposed by Brandon.
Without improvement to playing surface.
Temporary would be temporary on the surfaces as it exists, with permanent being the one with the improvement of the surfaces, as highlighted in Brandon's proposal for the 4 courts.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second Eric's motion.
Okay. Denise, I see your hand up. Did you have a question?
I was going to second.
Oh, okay. All right. Any questions before we take a vote? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that is, Denise, was your hand up for that? You voted for that?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes 5-1. Okay. We will go ahead and move on to item D then, 2026 Commission Priorities Discussion. So, let's see, 2023, we had met as an entire commission at that time to do a workshop where we all kind of sat in Brian's office in front of the whiteboard and listed all of our priorities as a commission. We've had a lot of turnover since then. I think there's just 3 of us that were there initially. So we want to revisit that, and we can do it one of 2 ways. We can discuss it here, or we can schedule another workshop to do the same thing where we all get together. It's less formal. We can sit in front of a whiteboard, sort things out, and go from there with priorities. So I will let you guys give your input on that.
In the interest of time and the things that we have to work with that seem to be taking up, I think we should do that in a separate workshop.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. Can we get that scheduled, Brian?
Yes, timing, do you have a preference? You want to do that in December?
I would like to get it done before the end of the year. That would be my preference.
Do you want it separate from your subcommittee meetings as part of
Yes,
one?
I think if we could get it together as the entire commission and just have a special meeting, workshop.
Okay. Is there, just considering Callie's availability, is there a time preference, morning, afternoon, evening, or a specific day that's preferable over others, or any blackout dates that you want me to avoid?
I would not be available December 3rd through 5th. My personal preference would be sometime in the morning, but that's just me. Eric?
May I suggest, because we just interviewed a potential another commission member, that we wait and allow her to participate if she gets, we're talking maybe in January or December for appointment?
Yes, well, actually, so I talked to Mikhail, and that will be added to the 18th, like this coming 18th council meeting. So if that is approved and brought forward with the mayor, she'll be available in December.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Any other comments on timing?
I'd say morning too, probably.
Okay. Kim?
Just day of the week, Monday preferably, if we could.
Okay. Monday mornings are best. Denise, did you have any input?
Yes, I will be having surgery scheduled probably in December. I won't be able to attend unless it's on Zoom or Teams.
We can arrange that, right?
Yeah, we'll have to record the meeting anyway.
Yeah.
So we can set that up for you,
Sure.
Denise. Is there what date will that be happening? Is there like a date before?
The date has not been set.
Okay. All right, I think I got a good general idea. I'll send out a couple of options and see what works best for the group.
Okay, great. All right, we will move on to item E, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board bylaws and ordinance draft review. Did everyone get a chance to look through the draft that was sent out? Brian, I don't know if you had anything.
Yeah, I can go over just, so in your packet, you have the bylaws and ordinances review. You'll see the changes in red there, and I could just go over the changes real quick on the points. So the first one is appointment, mayor or designee will interview qualified applicants before being confirmed by council. Ex officio and student representative language is clarified in there as well. Remote attendance section has been added in, let's see, that's 3B. Process added in case both the chair and vice chair are absent. Under C, or, sorry, number 4, B, I think it's going to be an additional section there. Notice requirements clarified, regular meetings versus special meetings, which is timely for our discussion. And then process or procedures for addressing agenda items have been added as well. Procedures for attending city council meetings also added there under 6. And removal of commission members section added under 12. And then 13 is the no surprise rule added.
I had just a couple of comments, maybe. On page 2, 3B3, the commissioner's camera should be turned on when participating in the meeting. I'm just curious, I know there have been times when people have had technical issues and their camera does not work or goes in and out. How is that handled then? If their camera is not working, but they can be heard and can hear us, are they no longer present if they can't use their camera, or is there?
Yeah, I think the intent is that commissioners, if they know they're going to have to attend remotely, get on, check the technology, make sure your camera's working. We can't always anticipate every technical glitch scenario. So if something comes up where you have bad reception, you're not able to use your camera, we'll just work through that. I don't think there's going to be too much of an issue there. The intent is for them to be on camera if possible. We like to, if a commissioner needs help with that or does not have access to a webcam, we can get one for them and help set that up.
Okay. And then my other question was, in the ordinance, page 2, item, 5, periodically is now crossed off. Review a complete inventory list of all property and equipment which shall be updated annually. That complete inventory list, is that created by staff presented to us? Who
Sorry.
is creating that and updating it annually?
Where are you reading, Carrie?
On ordinance 2018, on the second page, item number 5. Periodically review a complete inventory list of all property and equipment which shall be updated annually. It'd be under powers and duties.
Okay, I'm with you now. Yeah, so under the powers and duties, chapter 2.30, number 5, review a complete inventory list of all property and equipment which shall be updated annually. So we have a what's that list called? Equipment list, inventory list. The city goes through a small and attractive and things like that. So we can just review that as part of one of the subcommittees if you want. I don't know that necessarily needs to be a full commission, but inventory list of all property and equipment. You know what? Let's just do that as part of our annual department report.
Okay.
We prep that for council. We'll review that with you guys, and we'll just include that and go over all properties. It's a good time to look through our inventory of parklands as well as major equipment items.
Okay, and then my second question was the item right below that, report to city council annually regarding any parks and recreation program updates. Is that your department report, or is that something separate that we are?
Well, this is under the commission's powers and duties, so
Yeah.
I would assume that is a commission workshop or report to council.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
We do an annual report, but I think this is probably a good, yeah, I think it's probably a good opportunity for you guys to have a sit down and discuss
Okay.
those.
Okay. Did anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay, go ahead.
Who is our staff liaison?
So that's maybe transferring. Right now, it's me, but we might be making Brandon that staff liaison for the Parks and Recreation Commission. We're kind of going in that direction with other commissions as well.
Okay, and then it says staff support. I guess that's kind of general staff support to the, not an individual, but just general staff support.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. All right. Did you have any other comments about that?
Nope, unless you guys have any comments or concerns, if you're okay with the changes in the language, if you want to go ahead and just pass a motion of recommendation for approval for council.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the new bylaws as written.
Do you have a
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, that passes unanimously. All right, we will move on to item F, subcommittee updates. Do you want to go first?
In facilities, we talked about pickleball. That's pretty much it. We've been giving a lot of attention to pickleball, really wanting to come up with a solution, as shown, I think, by the contents of this meeting, and trying to figure out just some really good, a really good solution when we don't have a funding mechanism. And we've covered it ad nauseum here, so I don't think any else needs said.
We also met with the Little League.
Oh, yeah, we did meet with Little League. Sorry, they got lost in the... We had a really productive meeting with some new Little League leadership, and that was great to begin to establish a more productive working relationship with Little League, and it looks exciting for the future. I hope everybody that's involved in that can be encouraged, because I'm excited about, I think, the new possibilities of where we can go and the joint work we can get done together.
Okay, any questions for Eric about that? Okay. Our Parks and Playgrounds Subcommittee, we discussed the feasibility study. We had a brief discussion about who should be involved with the conversation of that. I don't know if we landed on anything with that. We just kind of briefly talked about it. But primarily, we talked about the universal design playground, which is what we're calling it now, instead of accessible playground. We went over the RFP, and we were kind of discussing ways to be a little bit creative with fundraising, creative ways to find money for this project, because the grant funding, it looks like we won't even have the option to apply until 2028. Is that correct, Brandon?
For the LWCF.
Yeah. So we're looking at other funding mechanisms for that project and possible fundraising. So we had a pretty good discussion about that. Did you have anything to add, Vicki?
The only other thing that I have in my notes is we talked about improvements at Windjammer with shade structures and kitchen improvements and drainage.
Denise, your hand is raised. Did you have a question?
Yes, I would like to get notifications for that committee meeting, the Parks and Playgrounds.
Okay.
But I indicated that I wanted to be a member of that committee. I just need to know when we're meeting.
Sure. Yeah, Brian, can you add Denise to that? Okay. Any questions about that subcommittee? Okay. Programs and Events Subcommittee, we went over some upcoming events that are going to be happening. The center will be open on Veterans Day for their Veterans Day lunch. There will also be the Veterans Day Parade downtown. The city has worked with Main Street to provide a sensory area again for that parade. The Ollie costume has been designed, but is not yet in production. So we're looking at probably next year sometime that will be ready. Gifts of Connection applicants can submit their applications through November 7th, which is past. So, people will be able to buy gifts and donate. They'll be collecting donations November 17th through December 15th. Let's see, programs, holiday sessions have started. There's been a lot of requests from families for more winter indoor sports, so Craig is kind of looking at ways we can provide that. We talked about food trucks in the park for summer, and Brandon might be able to give a little bit more information about that if he would like. There are a couple spaces in Windjammer and a couple spaces at Fort Nugent. We talked a little bit about city or I think that's it for that one. Did I forget anything, Brandon or Brian?
No, that's what I had. The food truck comments, they will need to be, as of right now, we're going to do the reoccurring permits with Island County. That just makes it easier for us to pick and choose whenever they can come in without a specific date permit. If they don't have that permit from Island County, then they would have to permit each time that they wanted to go there. We think that's going to be a pretty big threshold for people to come in. So we're going to try to do it with the reoccurring permit through Island County. Yeah, we've identified 2 spots down at Windjammer roundabout there at the end by the Clean Water Facility, and then 2 spots up by the flagpole at Fort Nugent. We also discussed the need for enforcement to make sure that whenever you're paying for the permit, that somebody else shows up to sell something, that we can kick you out whenever you've paid and they haven't.
Okay, any questions? Out of that? Okay. All right, we will move on to item G, Parks and Recreation Director updates.
Okay, just real briefly so we can finish up here. The meetings with the leagues went really well. Besides the new Little League, we also met with the new Football League leadership. I think it's going to be a great relationship. With discussions with both leagues, I think we are going to reevaluate the league field use agreement fee structures. We will keep the one-time field reservation fees as is. We'll continue to evaluate those, but I think the original intent of charging per hour with field usage, we ended up pulling back from that in consideration with both games and practices. So we were just charging for games, which kind of separated the whole methodology of a fee associated with the amount of use and impact of the fields anyway, kind of threw that out the window. But we've heard it, and we do want to be sensitive to, how are they able to anticipate schedules. The Football League has been holding games at the school, so basing it off of game hours doesn't make sense anymore. So we're working on them for the current agreement to get them all set up for this year, but we'll probably come back to council with some adjustments to that fee methodology again. We want to make sure that they're successful. We want to make sure that we do have some measure of cost recovery for maintenance. The leagues do not cover the maintenance costs at all, but I think they have been and are good partners and can work with us in a lot of different ways with volunteer work as well, which they already do a lot of in the fields. But I think we have a good setup for good communication going forward. And we got a number of items that we're going to address with maintenance, as well as working with them on the fee schedule. So we'll work on that probably a little in the subcommittees and then bring that back before we take that to council. We have Vicky, Carrie, and Tom, which are at the end of your terms at the end of this year. Do any of you not want to be reappointed?
I think we all want to be reappointed.
I'm giving you an out, right?
It's not an out. Life has changed since I started on, and so it's been mulling around in my head for the last month and a half, so I'm still mulling.
I would like to stay on if I can.
Okay, so Carrie and Tom, I'll just let Mikhail know, and we'll process that reappointment. Vicki, let's have conversations. Okay. We did do an interview today with Councilmember Marshall with Natalia Tallow, I think is how you say her last name. Fantastic candidate. I think she'd be a great asset to the commission. So we are recommending that, giving that recommendation to the mayor. And like I said, the mayor and Mikhail are both very familiar with her as well, and I think they agree with that assessment. So that will probably go to council next week if possible. and then we can get her going on some of these planning efforts. Let's see here. The feasibility study, we are getting a revised timeline from Barry Dunn, and then we'll have our kickoff meeting scheduled. So I'll be sending out a notice for that to you guys here soon. We also did do a workshop, just talk a little bit about our pros plan with City Council. So the intent of that is to have all these other plans wrapping up and be able to fold that into the pros plan. We'll probably put the study RFP out. I'm sorry, not the study, the pros plan RFP out. I think probably like spring next year. Get a good idea of costs and see if that's something that we can go ahead and move forward with. If we get back proposals above what our budgeted cost is for that plan, then we can fold that into the next budget cycle and address that with council and go back to them with some more information on numbers and timing. So that is, do you have any other updates, Brandon?
Yeah, we, just a little art commission update. We got one bid back for the installation of the Gate of Inspiration and the 3 totems. So that was the 3rd attempt, but we got one. So I think we're going to be moving forward with that project. So that's exciting. And we've got 2 new hires. Josiah is actually over in the other room, getting all situated with the city. So we're excited for that as well.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? All right, we'll move on to item 6, member comments. Sounds like we don't have any comments, so we'll move on to items.
I have one, Carrie.
Sorry, go ahead, Denise.
Yeah, I apologize for being so late. I did not know it was a Teams meeting and could not find a link. But I'm glad I made it, and I know that on the agenda we were going to discuss Scenic Heights Trail, and I think rather than discuss that in this full advisory board commission meeting, we should talk about it first in the Parks subcommittee.
Yeah, we can do that, definitely. Any other comments? All right, determination of future agenda items. Do we have anything at this time? Brian, when are you going to be presenting that to council about pickleball? Do you know?
I'll check with Julie. We've added a couple other things on December. I don't know if we'll be able to get in December, so it'll probably be January.
Oh, okay,
But,
okay.
Yeah. There's not really a lot we're waiting on with that. I mean, we pretty much have the numbers together, so I can take it to them whenever agenda allows.
All right. Any agenda items at this point? All right. If nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn